Number 1. The Antikythera mechanism. The object is a lump of corroded bronze about the size of a shoebox. It was recovered from a Roman-era shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. For 50 years it sat in a drawer at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Nobody knew what it was. In 1951, a British science historian named Derek de Solla Price, working at Yale, began to examine it seriously. He used X-ray imaging to look inside the corroded mass. What he found was a mechanism, 30 interlocking bronze gears, a differential gear train, calibrated dials for tracking the positions of the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets known to antiquity, a separate dial for predicting lunar and solar eclipses, a Fourier dial for tracking the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. The device is Hellenistic Greek. It dates from between 150 and 100 BCE. It is, by the consensus of every specialist who has examined it, the earliest known analog computer. Hellenistic Greek mechanical sophistication is real. Hero of Alexandria designed automata. Ctesibius built pneumatic devices. Archimedes wrote treatises on spheres that modeled planetary motion. The Antikythera mechanism does not appear in a cultural vacuum, but every other documented Hellenistic device uses simple gears on single axes, or pneumatics, or lever systems. The Antikythera mechanism uses differential gearing to model the irregular motion of the moon. Differential gearing does not reappear in the human record until the 14th century. It is then used for European astronomical clocks in monasteries. The gap is 1400 years. The mechanism was built. Then nothing comparable was built by anyone on Earth for the length of the entire Byzantine Empire. Then it was built again in Europe and attributed to medieval innovation. The first time this technology existed, it existed once, on a ship that sank, and then it was forgotten for the length of civilizations. Athens holds a machine too advanced for its century. Baghdad held a jar too advanced for its millennium. Number 2. The Baghdad Battery. In 1938, Wilhelm König was the director of the Iraqi National Museum in Baghdad. He was cataloging a collection of ceramic jars recovered from a site called Qudut Rabu just outside the city. The jars dated to the Parthian or Sasanian period, somewhere between the 2nd century BCE and the 7th century CE. One of them was not a normal jar. Inside the ceramic, König found a copper cylinder. Inside the copper cylinder was an iron rod. The cylinder was sealed at the top with bitumen. The iron rod did not touch the copper. König's conclusion, published in 1940, was that the object was an ancient galvanic cell, a battery. The interpretation was controversial from the beginning. Replications of the design using an acidic electrolyte, such as grape juice or vinegar, produce approximately 1 volt of current. General Electric built a working replica in 1940. The Discovery Channel built one in 2005. The physical principle is not in dispute. The question is whether the object's original users understood what they had. The mainstream alternative is that the object was a scroll container. The copper cylinder held a rolled papyrus or parchment. The iron rod was a support. The bitumen sealed the contents against moisture. This is a reasonable reading. Parthian and Sasanian scroll containers existed. Some of them used metal components, but the specific construction of the Qudut Rabu jar has no parallel in any other Parthian or Sasanian scroll container. The iron rod is centered in the copper cylinder and deliberately insulated from it. If the rod was a support, there is no reason for the insulation. If the rod was the writing end of a document seal, there is no reason for the copper cylinder. Every other scroll container in the period either uses wood and leather or uses a simple ceramic tube. In 2003, during the American invasion of Iraq, the Iraqi National Museum was looted. Thousands of cataloged objects were taken. The Baghdad Battery was among them. It has never been recovered. What it was is now an argument about an object that no one can examine anymore. Baghdad's object is gone. Cairo's is still in the building, and no one can say what it is for. Number 3. The Sabu Disk. In 1936, the British Egyptologist Walter Emery was excavating a mastaba tomb at Saqqara, south of Cairo. The tomb was designated S3111. It belonged to a First Dynasty nobleman named Sabu who had died around 3000 BCE. Among the grave goods, Emery found a flat stone disc. The disc was approximately 60 centimeters in diameter. It was carved from a single piece of metasilt stone, a type of schist. It had 3 curved lobes cut around a central hub. Emery's excavation was meticulous. The disc was recorded, catalogued, and transferred to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. It received the accession number JE 71295. It has been there since. The problem is that nobody knows what it is. The disc is too fragile for practical use. The metasilt stone it is carved from cracks under any significant stress. It could not have been a wheel. It could not have been a functional tool. Every other First Dynasty ritual object Emery catalogued at Saqqara has a parallel somewhere in the Egyptian archaeological record. Bowls, stelae, funerary figurines, offering plates. The Sabu disk has no parallel, not in the First Dynasty, not in the later dynasties, not in pre-dynastic Egypt, not anywhere. One object in one tomb with no ancestor and no descendant. Speculations have been published for 90 years. Some researchers have suggested it is a stylized oil lamp. Others have suggested it is a symbolic object representing a celestial concept. One engineer, Colin Reeder, writing in a 2010 analysis, proposed it was the mold for casting a metal object that has not survived. None of these explanations has become consensus because none of them accounts for the fundamental problem. The Sabu disk is a highly specialized object. Specialized objects are not made once. They are made in series by craftsmen who have made them before and will make them again. The craftsman who made the Sabu disk made it once. Egypt's disk survived because it was buried with a nobleman. Russia's object survived because it was buried in a bog. Number 4. The Shagir idol. In January of 1890, gold miners working at the Kurinsky peat bog in the Ural Mountains of central Russia struck something that was not gold. They struck wood. The wood was a carved post. It had been submerged in the anaerobic peat for a length of time nobody in 1890 could have guessed. The miners pulled it out in several pieces. The idol is 5 1/3 meters tall when reassembled. It is carved from a single larch trunk. Its surface is covered in geometric symbols, parallel lines, zigzags, and stylized human faces. 8 faces run the length of the body. Dozens of repeating motifs appear between them. Professor Mikhail Zhilin of the Russian Academy of Sciences led the most recent dating analysis. His team submitted core samples to the radiocarbon laboratory at Mannheim in Germany. The results, published in 2018 in the journal Antiquity, placed the idol's age at approximately 12,500 years. The Shagir idol is older than the pyramids by 8,000 years. It is older than Stonehenge by 7,000. It is older than Göbekli Tepe, which itself rewrote the timeline of monumental architecture, by 2,000 years. The peat bog explains how the wood survived. Anaerobic preservation is well understood. The age itself is not the anomaly. The anomaly is what is carved on the wood. The geometric patterns on the Shagir idol are not random. They repeat in deliberate sequence. They include abstract symbols, not just representations of animals or human forms. Abstract symbolic communication at this level of complexity is not supposed to exist in the Mesolithic. The mainstream model of cognitive development in early hunter-gatherer populations places the emergence of complex symbolic systems much later. Writing emerges around 4000 BCE. Complex proto-writing emerges perhaps 2000 years before that. The Shagir idol's symbols are not writing, but they are something we cannot classify. Someone 12,500 years ago in the Urals carved a 5-meter idol covered in a symbolic system we cannot read. Then whatever tradition produced it vanished. No comparable object has ever been found. The idol survived 12,000 years in a Russian bog. A bronze disc survived 3,600 years in a German hilltop. Number 6. The Klerksdorp spheres. You are underground in a pyrophyllite mine near Ottosdal in South Africa's northwest province. The rock around you is 2.8 billion years old. That is older than most complex life on Earth. It is older than the oxygen in the atmosphere you breathe. In the 1970s, miners working these deposits began pulling metallic-looking spheres out of the rock. The spheres are typically 3 to 5 centimeters across. Many of them carry parallel grooves running around their equators. Rolf Marx, the curator of the Klerksdorp Museum, began collecting them. The museum now holds several hundred specimens. The mainstream explanation is that the spheres are natural concretions. Concretions are mineral formations that precipitate out of solution as sedimentary rock forms. They produce rounded shapes. They are common. The geologist Bruce Cairncross published the definitive analysis in the South African Journal of Geology in 1988. His conclusion was that the Klerksdorp spheres are wollastonite and hematite concretions that formed naturally during the deposition of the surrounding rock. The conclusion covers the shape. It does not cover the grooves. Concretion formation is a chemical process. It is isotropic. It acts equally in all directions. Isotropic processes produce smooth surfaces. They do not produce parallel equatorial grooves. Cairncross acknowledged this in his own paper. He noted the grooves as an open question. He did not propose a natural mechanism that could account for them. He stated that further research was required. That was 37 years ago. The research has not been published. The spheres are either natural objects with a feature that natural processes cannot explain, or they are something else. Both possibilities remain on the table at the Klerksdorp Museum today. South Africa's spheres may be natural. Bolivia's bowl is not natural, and the problem is what is carved on it. Number 7. The Fuente Magna Bowl. In the 1950s, a farm worker on the Chua estate near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia turned up a stone bowl in a field. The worker took the bowl home and used it as a watering dish for his pigs. The bowl is approximately 30 centimeters in diameter. It is carved from sandstone. Its interior surface is covered in inscriptions. The inscriptions are in two separate scripts. One is a pre-Columbian set of characters consistent with local Andean symbolic systems. The other is not. The other script is cuneiform-style wedge marks arranged in horizontal rows. In the early 2000s, a Bolivian researcher named Bernardo Beatos brought the bowl to international attention. He arranged for epigraphic analysis by Clyde Winters, who identified the second script as Proto-Sumerian, a writing system used in Mesopotamia approximately 5,000 years ago. Winters's interpretation is contested. Mainstream Assyriologists have not accepted the reading. Some have argued the marks resemble Sumerian without actually being Sumerian. Others have argued the bowl is a modern forgery. The forgery hypothesis is the most common mainstream position. The bowl is held at the Museo de los Metales Preciosos in La Paz. The forgery explanation requires a specific scenario. A 1950s Bolivian farmer must have acquired enough knowledge of Proto-Sumerian script to produce a convincing forgery, or someone before him must have done so and left the bowl where it was found. The forger must have executed the inscription skillfully enough that the debate about its authenticity has continued for more than 20 years. No such forger has been named, no workshop has been identified, no other objects by the same hand have surfaced. If the bowl is a forgery, it is an exceptionally sophisticated one produced by someone in rural Bolivia in the middle of the 20th century, who then walked away and was never identified. If the bowl is authentic, a writing system used in southern Mesopotamia reached the shores of Lake Titicaca 4,000 years before anyone thought contact between those regions was possible. Neither explanation is comfortable, neither has been disproved. La Paz holds a bowl that may or may not be Sumerian. Bogota holds objects shaped like airplanes, made in a culture that had no name for flight. Number 8. The Quimbaya golden objects. In the gold-working tombs of the Quimbaya culture, scattered across the Cauca River Valley in western Colombia, excavators have recovered thousands of cast gold objects. Most of them are recognizable. Animals, humans, plants, ceremonial figures rendered in the geometric style the Quimbaya are known for. The Quimbaya flourished between approximately 300 and 1500 CE. Their goldwork is considered among the finest in pre-Columbian America. Major collections are held at the Museo del Oro in Bogota. Among the geometric figures, a small subset of objects has no easy identification. They are approximately 5 centimeters long. They are cast in gold. They have a central body, two symmetrical lateral extensions, and a vertical structure at the rear. The lateral extensions are delta wing-shaped. The vertical structure is a stabilizer. A cockpit-like opening is present on top of the body. The mainstream interpretation is that these are stylized flying fish or insects. Quimbaya artisans frequently abstracted zoomorphic forms. Stylization is consistent with their broader artistic tradition. The interpretation covers the general form. It does not cover the specific features. Flying fish do not have vertical stabilizers. Insects do not have delta wings. Birds do not have separate cockpits behind the head. Every one of these features is present on the objects. Every one of them is a feature of aircraft. None of them is a feature of any animal that has ever flown. In 1994, two German aeronautical engineers, Peter Belting and Konrad Lubers, built scaled-up radio-controlled models of the Quimbaya objects to test whether the forms were aerodynamically viable. The models flew. They were stable in flight. This does not prove the Quimbaya built aircraft. It proves that whoever designed these objects designed them with principles that are aerodynamically correct. The Quimbaya did not have a word for aircraft. They had no observable reason to produce objects that would function as aircraft if scaled up, but they produced them. The objects sit in the Museo del Oro, under placards describing them as zoomorphic. The Quimbaya gold objects have been studied for over a century. The Crete disc has been studied even longer, and it is still unreadable. Number 9. The Phaistos disc. You are Luigi Pernier, an Italian archaeologist, and it is the summer of 1908. You are working the third excavation season at the Minoan Palace complex at Phaistos on the southern coast of Crete. You have been reading Linear A for years. You know every sign that Arthur Evans has cataloged across the island. On the afternoon of July the 3rd, your workmen clear a basement room beneath the northeastern quarter of the palace. You lift a clay disc out of the fill. It is roughly the diameter of your hand. You turn it over in your fingers, and you realize 3 three things at once. The disc is covered in writing. The writing is arranged in a spiral from the rim to the center. You cannot read any of it. The Phaistos disc carries 241 symbols on its two faces. The symbols are not painted on. They were impressed into wet clay using pre-made stamps. 45 distinct stamp types have been identified. This is the detail that matters. Stamps are a technology of reproduction. You do not make a set of 45 stamps to impress a single unique message. You make them because you expect to use them again. The Phaistos disc is therefore not a one-off inscription. It is a specimen of a writing system that was standardized, organized, and produced using manufactured tools. A writing system produced by a palace culture should appear on other objects, in tombs, on tablets, on pottery, in the palace complex itself, where thousands of linear A and linear B inscriptions have been recovered. It appears on none of them. Pernille lived for another 29 years after finding the disc. He published descriptions of it. He wrote catalogs. He attended conferences where other scholars offered decipherments, and he declined to endorse any of them. When he died in 1937, the disc was still unread. It is still unread today, 117 years after Pernille's workmen cleared the basement room. Thousands of claimed decipherments have been published. None has achieved consensus. The stamps that produced the inscription have never been located. The disc is held at the Heraclean Archaeological Museum. Visitors walk past it every day. Its label describes it as undeciphered. It does not explain that the word means what it means. The Phaistos disc is unreadable, but its authenticity is not in doubt. The object found in a Romanian quarry in 1974 is the opposite problem.